This is Taiwan Cable. I'm Yang Guangshun. Are Taiwanese young people becoming more supportive of unification with China? And if so, why? According to a recent poll released in April 2026 by My Formosa News, 22.4% of Taiwanese respondents say they could accept a proposal of peaceful unification put forward by Beijing. Now, a clear majority of 68.2% of respondents still reject it. But the change is notable. In November last year, the same polling organization found that only 15.2% preferred unification. Another long-term survey by National Cheng University showed just 7.2% last year. That's a big change in a relatively short period. One possible explanation lies in the wording of the poll, specifically the condition of peace. When unification is framed as peaceful, support tends to increase. This is not a fringe poll. Unlike some questionable surveys we saw before Taiwan's presidential election in 2024, My Formosa News polls are generally considered credible and are often used as a reference point in elections. So, these numbers deserve serious attention. But what is even more striking is this. Among respondents aged 20 to 29, 24.5% expressed support for peaceful unification. That is not only higher than the overall average. It is also about 10% higher than those between 30 to 49 years old. This is surprising. For years, polling trends have consistently shown that older generations are more supportive of unification. That pattern has often been explained by historical factors. Older generations were educated during the authoritarian rule under the Kuomintang, when a greater China identity and the historical mission of cross-strait reunification was emphasized. Younger generations, by contrast, grew up in a democratic Taiwan, exposed to a media and education environment that stresses a distinct Taiwanese identity. In fact, about a decade ago, former President Tsai Ing-wen famously described young people in Taiwan as naturally pro-independence. So, why is this changing? One hypothesis is that young people fear war and believe they will be the first to suffer from a war. But several Taiwanese scholars have found limited evidence to support this claim. In fact, around 60% of young people say they are willing to fight for Taiwan, though that number varies depending on how the question is asked in surveys. Looking back, this is not entirely unprecedented. A 2017 survey by Commonwealth magazine found that 13.8% of respondents aged 20 to 29 supported unification, again higher than other age groups at the time. That study suggested the reason was not identity, but economics. Young people facing limited economic prospects in Taiwan placed their hopes in China. But today, Taiwan's economy is in a much stronger position than in 2017. Its economic growth rate has even surpassed China's, so the explanation may lie elsewhere. Some argue that support for unification reflects dissatisfaction with the status quo, particularly whether young people feel they are benefiting from Taiwan's economic growth. Other arguments point to a broader anti-establishment sentiment. The Democratic Progressive Party, or DPP, which emphasizes Taiwan's distinct identity, will soon have been in power for nearly a decade, since 2016. For many young people, this is the only political environment they have known. In that case, the DPP itself has become the establishment. And for younger voters, it is often the establishment they push against. In the same poll, the DPP also has the lowest level of support among young people compared to the other major parties like KMT. Among young respondents, about 11% expressed a favorable view of the CCP. That may sound low, but it is still higher than the single-digit levels seen among those aged 30 to 49. But does this favorable view for CCP or even unification come only from dissatisfaction with Taiwan's political system? Some analysts argue that it may also be influenced by culture. Chinese popular culture is increasingly consumed by young people in Taiwan. Last year, Zhang Weiwei, a professor at Fudan University in Shanghai, argued that platforms like RedNote or Xiaohongshu are gradually shaping the views of Taiwanese youth. He even suggested that governing Taiwan after unification could be easier than governing Hong Kong. Other data shows a similar direction. Taiwanese users of TikTok tend to have more favorable views of China, lower willingness to resist Chinese aggression, and in some cases, a weaker sense of Taiwanese identity. Of course, a single poll does not necessarily signal a long-term trend, but it does highlight something important. We need to closely monitor any factors that may weaken Taiwan's will to resist, because regardless of the explanation, one thing is certain. China will double down its united front efforts to win over Taiwan's younger generation.